Hello and welcome to this section. Today we would like to talk about S3 and I'm going to explain about the properties of a bucket. Let's get started. Inside the AWS Management Console, I'm going to the S3 storage, and as you can see, I've already created a bunch of other buckets for testing purposes, but we're going to work on the bucket that we created in the previous video, that is ITrepo-test. If I click here, not on the name of the bucket, I can directly go to a bunch of properties and permissions and management settings that I have. Click the properties here to go to this page. And from the previous video, you know that you can also click on the name of the bucket, which is the ITrepo-test, and you end up on the overview tab, and then you can go to the properties. So this is the property page of the bucket. And if you compare it with the properties of an object or properties of a file, let's say, which we did in the previous video, there were less options when you click on the properties of an object. But here on the bucket, there are much more options, and basically whatever we're doing here, all the objects inside the bucket, they're gonna inherit the settings, and we are going to impact all of the objects inside this ITrepo-test bucket. First thing that I usually talk is the tags options, which is in the advanced settings. And if you remember, when we created this bucket, we put a key name and a value for test for the tags. And again, I want to emphasize the tags are important for the reporting purposes, or if you are working with third-party application for managing your cloud solutions like Cloud Check or Cloudability for bill management, then the tags are really important. I'm going to add another tag, and I put it env as environment and dev as development, for example, and I hit save here. So now we have two tags on our bucket. You can see two tags here, and we will use these tags later for our reports. Make sure that you are always configuring tags, and this is just a test and a demo. If you work in an enterprise organization with bunch of accounts, multiple machines, and different people working with this platform, you end up having lots of objects running inside your AWS management console, and if you don't put proper tags on them, you can't actually track them, and you may end up running them without using them, and then this is going to impact your bills on the AWS account. The next option that I want to show you is versioning. Technically, versioning is like a snapshot of your objects whenever you are doing any changes on your objects, and you can always revert back to the previous state of your objects, which is pretty useful. It could be kind of short-term backups. So with the versioning, if you change a file, you have the history of your file, and you have the previous state of the files. By default, versioning is disabled. I'm going to click on the versioning and select enable here. Before saving it, I'm going to show you something. I'm going back to the bucket. If I click on the bucket here, you can see that we don't have any option for versioning here right now, and I'm just seeing my file and my folder, right? Let's enable it now. Going to the properties, versioning, hit enable and save. Now if I go back to my overview tab, then you can see there is a versions option here, which by default is hide. And if I click show, you can see that our view is gonna change. So you can see that s3-test.txt, this is our file, and now we have something below our file. It says that this is the time that actually we created the file, and the version ID is null. Basically, when the versioning is enabled, below our file, we have the current state of our file, and it's saying latest version. So this is basically the file right now itself, because we haven't changed this file, and we have just one copy of this file. There wasn't any changes. So let's upload the same file again to the S3 bucket to see what will happen. So s3-test.txt. I'm going to upload s3-test. Just basically hit next, upload. And look at here. Now, this is our latest version, which is the most up-to-date one. And the previous file, it goes to another version here. If I upload the file for the third time, you can see now we have 3 versions of this file. Well, this view could be a little bit confusing. If you go back on the versions and click on hide, we have just one file, s3-test.txt. But because we uploaded this file 3 times, and because the versioning is enabled on the bucket, S3 is going to keep track of all the previous versions. Let's do a quick test. I'm going to create a new file and keep changing it and uploading it to my S3 to see what will happen. I'm on a Mac system. I'm opening a new terminal, creating a new file called file1.txt. Hit I here and put this is file1 and save the file. I'm going to upload this file to my bucket. So if I go in this file, and we know that we cannot click here because we will get the access denied, but I can open the file. I can see that it says this is file 1. Now I'm going back to my file on my system again. I'm opening my file and change the file to new information, save the file, and now I'm trying to upload it back to my S3 bucket. This file, it's with the new information. Well, we got the file, and if I go back to file 1 on my S3 bucket and try to open it, we got the file with the new information. Basically, this is the new version of the file. If I go back to my bucket, and if I want to see what was in the file a couple of minutes ago or the day before, I can just go to the versions and see what is going on with my file. File 1, basically, we have one version at the very beginning, and then we had another version. We can access all of these versions pretty easy, and it is very good feature actually inside the S3 bucket. I can click on this one, and now, and basically this is a version. I can click on open, and I can see the first version. I can go back to my bucket, I can click on the second version, open it, and this is the new version. So we have both versions available to us, which is really good features from the AWS. So I'm going to hide my versions. Another option is that let's say you accidentally delete a file and you want to revert back the file. I'm sure that you all work with the Vmware snapshots or Hyper-V snapshots or storage snapshots. It's pretty useful when you accidentally delete something and you want to restore quickly the files or objects. So it's the same idea. Let's say I'm going to click this file accidentally and delete this object, and I'm confirming it. So now the object is gone, but don't forget that because the versioning is enabled on my bucket, I can always go to the versionings and click on show. Let's see what is happening to our file1.txt, which is pretty interesting. So we have all the previous versions, even though the file is gone from the console and we cannot see it at the very beginning. But if you go to versions, you can see all the previous versions from your file. But if you remember, I uploaded this file1.txt 2 times. So this is the first one, and we can double check basically. I can click on this one, and this is the first one. This is file 1, and I can go back. This is the second one, and I can open it. And this is the file 1 with the new information, right? So basically, this is the first version, this is the second version. I am aware of these ones, but what is this one? Well, you should be aware that whenever you are deleting something from S3 bucket, and if the versioning is enabled, so don't forget this, it should be enabled. You have to enable the versioning from the properties, because by default this is not enabled. So if the versioning is enabled and if you delete something, S3 it's not going to delete your object. Actually, it's going to flag it, or let's say put a suffix for it as delete marker, and then you cannot see this object inside S3. Basically, if you have an object with this delete marker, you cannot see it inside the S3 bucket. But the object is there. It's like a hidden object. So if you accidentally delete something, I know it's going to be a little bit confusing, but what you have to do in order to restore your file, and if you want to see it here actually, is you have to go to the versions and you need to delete this object actually. This one with the delete marker. If you delete this one, then you should be able to see your previous state of your object. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to select this one, go to the actions and delete. And here it says all affected versions of objects will be permanently deleted, which is pretty confusing. I don't know when AWS is going to change this one, but when you delete your delete marker, you are literally deleting just this one, not the other 2 versions. You click on delete, and you can see now the previous one, it becomes the latest version, which is pretty normal. If you now click on versions hide, then boom, we can see our objects. So this is pretty important in terms of the exam also. This is the way that we are recovering or restoring deleted objects from our bucket if the versioning is enabled. Another option that I would like to talk about the properties of the bucket is encryption. And this is basically security at rest. We have the data on a bucket and we want to encrypt the data inside the bucket to make sure that the data is not in clear text or it's not accessible by anyone, and we want to encrypt it. This is a thing that we are mostly doing right now in our cell phones. Everything is encrypted. If we have a laptop, we are going to encrypt our hard disk. If it's a Windows, for example, we are using BitLocker. Most of the time right now, we are encrypting all of our data with certificates, algorithms like RSA. So here is also the same idea. And most of the organizations and companies, when you're uploading something to the cloud, let's say you are dumping your backup to the cloud, cloud or sending some information to the S3, they usually ask you, are you sure that the data is encrypted at rest? So we talk about encryption in transit later, but this is gonna be encryption at rest and make sure that everything inside the bucket is encrypted. So let's see this one. If I go to this settings, I can just enable the encryption, and we have two options. One of them is AES 256 and the other one is the AWS KMS. If we select AES 256, we don't have that much choice here. We are using the S3 key here, and we have to double check with our bucket policy, which we are going to talk about it in the next video. If our setting is against our policy, then we cannot basically encrypt anything. But right now, I'm going to select this one. If you go with the AWS KMS, then we have to create keys for these encryptions, which I have a bunch of keys here, and I've created these ones before, but I'm not going to use it for the purpose of this demo. So we need a key for encryption, and we can use the S3 key, or we can use our keys. Right now, let's use the AES 256, and I'm going to hit save. Before clicking on the save, make sure that you are reading this line here. It says this property does not affect existing objects in your bucket, and this is really, really important. It means, let's click save here. These objects here, they are not encrypted right now, and we can see this actually. If I click here in the properties, we have encryption, and it says none because they were existed inside the bucket. So if we enable the encryption, which it is enabled right now, and we can see it in the properties, any objects that we are uploading right now, then it's gonna be encrypted. I can go, let's say, to this new folder -test, and I can upload a new file here, like file 1 in this new folder. And now if I click on the file 1, you can see that this file is encrypted with AES 256. So that's it for today. In the next video, I'm going to talk more about the permissions tab.